Welcome, everyone. My name is Dustin Potts. I work at JPMorgan Chase. Welcome to the 7 Deadly Sins of Agile Coaching. So if you don't want to hear about coaching, you're in the wrong spot. Just real curious, how many of you are actually a coach? Wow. So you could probably write this for me, right? Definitely going to use your help with a lot of these. So I do enjoy the participation, so please interrupt me as much as possible. I also walk around a lot. So, any questions that you have or anything like that, please interrupt.
I have a question.
Sure, already.
Just the concept of an Agile Coach, I understand that people are certified in that, but I don't really know what that role is.
I'll get to that. So, real quick, who am I? I call myself an Agile activist only because that's what I want to do. I want to change the world to be Agile, right? I hate waterfall. I've hated it forever. It's horrible. I used to work for the government, right, which was CMMI, level 5 certified, and you might as well have shot me in the head, right? So probably now for the last 12 years, probably starting with this guy over here, we've been doing nothing but transformations, okay? Which is my passion, okay? And the whole goal is to get better. The whole goal is to get more people thinking about Agile. So the fact that there's so many new people here, I think is exciting. The fact that we still have people here, it's been here 8 years, I think that's exciting. So very passionate about Agile. I have the scars to prove it. This is not easy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Very challenging with what we do, right? See, I hit the button too many times. And it's nothing but a battle all the time. I can't stand here. It's nothing but a battle the entire time. So if you're an Agile coach, you know this. If you've done coaching for a while, you know how hard it is. And if you want to be a coach, be prepared, okay? It's going to be very difficult. I've hired all types of coaches. So in transformation, you hire coaches, right? How many types of coaches are there? Anybody know? Give me some coach names. What types of coaches are there? Process coach? What's a process coach?
Basically, we coaches the process of Agile. Fundamental, foundational.
There's a lot of good frameworks out there, right? Scrum frameworks, Kanban, right? There's different types of coaches out there, and there's new sprouting every day, right? Used to call them engineering coaches, right? Extreme programming is extremely important. Now I hear DevOps. We have DevOps coaches. We have all types of coaches, okay? I've hired them all, pretty much. I've pretty much hired them all. Oh, don't tell me it's delayed. So I had some people ask me, why only 7 sins, Dustin? It's really simple. It's really simple. It was a marketing deploy. I wanted to make sure I could get people to the actual session. So it sounds like a catchy phrase, 7 deadly sins, right? I always have a fear that nobody will show up at my session, so I need to put some marketing in it. One of the things, too, it became very depressing as I started to list out all the experiences, all the sins that I think I've seen from all the coaches that I've had over my career. And it became very depressing. So I had to limit what we were going to talk about because we only have about an hour. Okay? So if you want to talk about more, we can. This is the first time I've actually done this presentation, so I don't know if it's going to take an hour. I don't know if it's going to take 15 minutes. But I'm here for the entire time that you need to talk. So we can actually talk more about the content that I have after I'm done. Okay? What is an Agile coach? Anybody know? Who are the coaches? What's an Agile coach? What do you do?
Guide the organization.
Say it again.
Guide the organization.
Guide the organization. Guide the teams, right? This is important because this is actually starting to turn into a job title at organizations. They're starting to see the value of this in organizations. It used to be we hired parachuters to jump in to change teams and change orgs. Now we're starting to see the value add of the position, which is really interesting. I want to talk about this more at the end, okay? So let's get going. The number one sin of an Agile coach. I love this picture. I was looking for a boss that was yelling at a team, right? One of the things that's interesting about this picture is I've never seen an Agile coach in a suit. I've never hired an Agile coach in a suit, right? Most of the Agile coaches are hippies, right? They wear shorts, and if you tell them that they need to dress up, they get mad, right? So that was the first interesting aspect of the picture. Second thing is, a coach is not a boss, okay? It's not the boss of the team. That's important to understand, right? I've had many coaches I've had to let go because they felt as though they were command and control of the team, and they wanted to boss the team around. What happens when you try and boss the team around, right? They're not going to change. They already have enough bosses, right? How many bosses do a team have, right? They have their resource manager boss, right? QA boss, QA manager, dev manager. We'll introduce a new boss, the product owner, right? And then we got a coach. Well, who's the boss? You cannot be a boss and be a coach, okay? It's not going to work. I use this analogy all the time. I actually hate the word coach, okay? I hate it. Who is the coach of the Ohio State Buckeye football team? Who's the boss of the Ohio State Buckeye football team? Urban Meyer. Who controls playing time? Urban Meyer. Whatever he says goes, right? He is the boss. We call the boss a coach. We can't use the coach as a term for command and control. I actually really hate this, okay? Because we all kind of want to get rid of command and control, right? That's part of the Agile concept and things like that, but yet we call it a coach, call them a coach, okay? Any comments on this one? I don't know yet. I haven't figured it out. If you can come up with a great, there could be a mushy one like a, supporter, Agile supporter, or I don't know. I haven't come up with one. Guide or Agile buddy? Is that what you said? Agile buddy? I like that. Agile buddy. I'm your Agile buddy. This I've actually had to let coaches go because of this. Okay? They became too command and control, and they could not coach a team. Okay? Number 2.
Pardon me.
Go ahead.
What role were you in when you were hiring and firing people?
I was on the transformation team.
In what role? Were you a boss?
Yeah, I was actually a boss.
Were you a product owner?
Nope.
Program?
Well, I was on the Agile transformation team, part of the transformation program.
So,
Mhm.
within Chase, then you would go to various groups and get them from waterfall to Agile and then move on to another group within Chase?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So at Chase and even other organizations I've been at, we hired coaches, and those coaches would be embedded into teams to help transform from waterfall to Agile. Okay? So typically what we would do is hire first process coaches. Okay? And those process coaches would help them through Scrum, Kanban, whatever the team needed. And then after a while, we hired engineering coaches to help them through the engineering process, which was how do you get better at continuous integration, test automation, stuff like that. That help? Cool. Good question. Number 2, one size fits all. It's extremely important to understand that there's many different flavors of Agile. Scrum, Kanban, Lean. There's very few people that know all of it. We make stuff up. What did you say? Scrumban, right? We make stuff up, right? Well, what's new? What's the latest craze, right? DevOps, right? We're using the terms DevOps, right? Nexus, less, safe, less. Dad, right? This is really, I've seen this a lot because coaches typically come in with their own experiences and their own expertise, and they want everything to fit into their coaching style. And unfortunately, it doesn't work, okay? So your best coaches are able to mold to what the team needs. You cannot do one size fits all for any of your engagements, okay? Please make sure you listen, you observe, and then you determine ways to help them improve through the techniques that are all available. We have tons of techniques that are within the Agile umbrella right now. You need to be good at all of them, okay? At some point in time, you will have to leverage them. We call it like maturity. You know, you start off here and then you mature somewhere else, right? Agile is more of a journey, not a place to be. Okay? Questions on that one? Won't compromise. What's this mean?
Must apply a certain methodology, must apply something, must use standards in a certain way.
I call them Agile purists. Anybody ever heard people talk like that? Agile purists? What's an Agile purist? My way or the highway. It's academic. It's what it says. It says right here, you have to do your stand-up. How do you do your stand-up? What'd you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? What's your blockers? Is that command control? Could be, right? So there's a lot of purists out there, okay? You have to understand the intent of the practice. Why are you doing the practice? Why are you doing that stand-up, right? It's not for status reports, by the way. PMs, how many PMs are in the room? No, it's not for status reports, right? You have to understand that. You have to understand the intent of why we do these practices, right? Extremely important. If you're an Agile purist and all you've done is read the book, right, and you just say to them, do the daily stand-up this way, and everybody stands up, yeah, I did this yesterday, I'm going to do this today, and I have no blockers. And your stand-up lasts 2 minutes, guess what? You check the box, you got it done, but did you really do a stand-up? Did you really collaborate? Did you really talk? Did you find out if the team is still on schedule? They're actually working toward a goal and they all agree. Are they helping each other, right? Those are what stand-ups are for. Actually, the team getting together to plan for the day. What can we get done today? Who needs help, right? Don't be an Agile purist, okay? Learn to compromise. Learn to understand the intent. How many people have seen this? A lot. There's a lot out there, right? Everybody wants to be a coach. They want to get certified. They want to understand the practices. They want to get very good at the practices. I absolutely applaud that, but understand the intent. Okay? I was looking for a bomb picture, and this came up. What do I mean by blow it up?
Come in, guns blazing. Everything you're doing now is bad.
Yeah, you know, it's real interesting. We have coaches out there that want their own like little startup within the organization, right? They want to blow everything up, bring everybody in a room, right? Lock the door, don't let anybody in, and build their own world, right? They want to blow up everything. Why doesn't that work? Misalignment?
People don't like being changed unless they're wanting to accept it.
Not wanting to change? The organization's still there, right? You've only isolated them for a temporary period of time. At some point in time, they're going to kick them out of that room, right? The coach is going to leave. They're going to kick them out of the room. And then this team is going to be like, wait a second, I got to deal with all this other stuff now. I don't know how to do that, right? If you can't coach a team within the current organization on how to be agile, you're not really a coach. Anybody can take a team, brand new team with no impacts from anything other than I just need to get this backlog done. Anybody can do that, right? But it's not sustainable. It's not going to last. Teams are going to die. As soon as you leave, the culture is going to come in, the PMs are going to come in, you need a status report's going to come in, and next thing you know, the team's not going to know what to do, right? And then it'll die. I've actually seen this multiple times. Question?
I was just going to say another factor is even if the coach had the authority and power somehow to isolate a team, it's never good to just implement a, kind of a nuclear option change just because the effects on the team, their productivity and their cohesiveness is going to go tank so far low it'll probably destroy the effectiveness of that group anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of times coaches just want to call success, right? So they just want to, in my time here, look what I did, see? And they don't realize that what they did is more damaging actually than what they need to do from a coaching perspective. Any other questions? We're rolling through. We're on number 5. What is Agile? I ask this all the time. I'm actually starting to ask this question a lot. What is Agile? Excuse for a conversation? We have very large organizations that are spending tons of money. We have CIOs at very high levels spending tons of money to transform to Agile. Does anybody know what that is? It's a mindset. I would get fired if I told our CIO it's a mindset. I have an opinion, okay? This is my opinion, okay? Over the last 12 years, we've done Scrum, Kanban, Less, Safe, all these frameworks. The one thing that I think is missing is actually the idea of continuous improvement, okay? You will not be able to transform a team in the short time you're there as a coach. When you coach, you have to coach toward continuous improvement. You have to teach a team about how to improve, right? Not about where you're at today, but how you're going to get to the next step. I don't think Agile transformation is a landing spot. We actually have organizations creating programs for Agile transformation. Programs have an end date, right? We deliver a program. Agile is more about changing the culture to be more about continuous improvement. That's why all these new things are coming up, these new techniques, right? DevOps, right? Continuous deployment, all of these new techniques are coming up. We need to teach a team that it's okay to continuously improve and look for opportunities to improve. Where should they look at, right? What things should they constantly be removing from what they do? Learn about lean, learn about waste, right? Those are things that teams should be good at. They shouldn't just be good at a daily stand-up. They shouldn't just be good at, actually they shouldn't be just good at delivering software. They should be good at continuously improving, right? Because I ask myself all the time, it's been 12 years since I've been doing this, and I ask myself all the time, what's next? What's after Agile? Got to be coming. There was something before Agile. What's next, right? If we're not coaching teams to be set up for success when the next thing rolls around, we failed as a coach, right? Understanding concepts like lean, concepts of value stream mapping, of concepts like eliminating waste, right? Creating flow. Those are foundational concepts that last for a long period of time. And if you're not coaching to that, you're actually not succeeding. Okay? Everything you do is temporary. Comments on that? I'm very passionate about this one. Very passionate. The reason I am is because I see too many teams go backwards. Too many teams go backwards. Too many organizations go backwards, right? That's one of the things I see all the time too. You'll push hard. Coaches will push. They'll all believe in TDD, right? We'll have programmers doing TDD, and then the coach leaves. You come back in 6 months later, and there's no TDD. Pair programming. How many people in here do pair programming at their organization? Awesome. Do you pair all the time? Somewhat. Why not all the time? It's hard. It's hard. I actually believe everybody should be pairing. I wish I had a pair up here. Right? I think we're more productive if we pair. Not Kip. Not you guys. Dylan.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when I see improving, the first thing that comes to my mind is retrospective. So I'm curious, within the realm, and if a retrospective is a ritual that is happening, like a stand-up, but it's not happening in a meaningful way, what are the things that you've seen that are causing that retrospective to fail? I feel like
It's the most, how should I say this? It turns into a bitch session. Seriously. And all they do is complain. And there's no management, nobody's there, so they get to. And that's okay. A lot of times venting is okay. But I ask the question all the time to my teams, what are you improving this sprint? Are you actually improving something? Or are you just bitching at the retro? Yeah. And you know what I get when I ask that question, what are you improving this sprint? What do you think I get? Silence?
What should we do?
No? I don't have enough time. Remember, I got all these stories, Dustin. I don't have enough time to do any sprinting or improving, right? How do we improve if we don't have any time? Do we even give them permission to improve? I heard the word, starting to use the word permission a lot, right? We don't really understand that command and control has a lot to do with permission. I ask permission to go on vacation, right? Do you need to ask permission to improve? Probably do. Excellent. Please do. Who was that? Okay.
It's not up for the coach or the scrum master or iteration manager, whatever title you want to give permission to the team. You should be talking to the team. The team should be asking them questions about improvements, important, but how are they going to interact with the other team members, make sure they're getting out of their seat, make sure they're having conversations, feedback loops. Permission sounds like you are in charge of them, and that's
Well, and you're absolutely right. I think what I'm trying to say from a permission perspective is as you coach, you want to coach them on learning how to improve, using the things that they need. How many do they use metrics to learn how to improve? Sure. Right? They should, right? They should value that. They should value the metrics as not a stick, but as actually an opportunity to improve. Are you coaching teams to learn how to do that? You got to coach them to learn how to identify opportunities to improve. The permission part is where you've got to coach management to let them improve. Right? Instilling permission.
For the autonomous team, right? Because a lot of teams just sit around and don't know they can challenge the process.
Exactly.
That's often the bigger barrier to continuous improvement.
There's
I
a
agree
part
with
of it, encouraging them, right? So encourage them to take that action item out of the retro and put it on your sprint board. Right?
Make it big visible. Make it big visible, right? We are improving this sprint, this thing, right? let your leadership know, look, we're going to try and improve, right? That kind of allows you to get permission, right? Hey, make a permission story, or not a permission, an improvement story, right? Put it in the backlog.
I think for some people, permission is, well, I only get 4 hours a month to work on this. I have to be project billable for everything else. So who do I charge for that? To do this improvement, it's going to take me 8 hours.
That's back to getting permission, right? That's what we've got to fight for as coaches, right? You can't just teach them to identify the waste and teach them to identify opportunities to improve, but you also have to talk to the leadership about, hey, letting them improve, right?
The other question I have is when you talk about improving and then you talk about, oh, it's going to take me this much time, the question comes in, are you trying to do a task as an improving, or are you trying to embed it in your culture that I'm going to do this thing as part of my activity and improve it, right? Because a lot of times, what I've seen it in the retrospect, people talk about complaint. Nobody talks about an action of what I need to do to prevent this happening. And that's what you should find it out and make it visible. Not, I mean, again, I get it if there is a technical aspect and you're trying to improve it, but if you're trying to improve it, your behavior, then it should never be, do I have 4 hours or do I have 8 hours? It should be part of your DNA, how you work it should be in that.
I think that's extremely important, and I think that's part of being agile. So I asked the question, what is agile? I asked, has anybody ever seen a perfect agile team? A perfect agile team. I hope I never do either. I've never seen one. And so I'm constantly in transformations asked by CIOs and senior leaders, Dustin, how will we know when we're agile? I mean, early on in my career, it was, oh, they're not agile. I know they're not, right? They're not doing this. Okay, they're not, but are they improving? Is agile really about improving, right?
I wonder, Dustin, if it's also improving, but also without obligation.
Without obligation.
So, for example, some of the times with my teams, it seems like you show them Scrum, you're going through this transition, and if you leave, they feel like they have to do all of these ceremonies out of obligation towards the system, as opposed to having that internal responsibility, similar to Chris Avery's talk, where they feel empowered that they want to do.
Exactly. So that's back to the intent, right? Why do I do this? I don't know how many times I've had developers on my teams come up to me and say, Dustin, I don't even know why I go to the stand-up. It's not about me. I'm like, okay, it's about the team, right? Well, I don't need to hear what everybody else does. I'm like, why not? Maybe you're going to help them with what they're going to do, right? In the culture that we had before, it was very individual, right? I did my job, I coded my code, I handed it to somebody else, I was done, I left for the day, right? Now we want them to participate as a team. And you still have that mindset of, I want to be an individual within the team instead of the whole team. A lot of these ceremonies have an intent around team communication, organization as a team, working as a team. They call it Scrum for a reason, right? You're working together to solve a problem. You got to get them over that mindset, right? You got to be able to coach to that. You got to be able to coach to, you're not just doing a stand-up just for the 3 questions. You're doing a stand-up as a team, right? I say this all the time. The team wins together and loses together in each sprint, right? I'm a huge fan of sports, right? You got to win the game. What's the game? You got to deliver working software with no defects. That's the game. The game isn't that I get all of my stories written before the end of the sprint. Oh, I get to go to my boss and say, hey, all my stories are done. Who cares? Nobody cares. I can't deliver stories to production. I got to have working software, right? So if you aren't working as a team, who cares? Who cares? Your boss may care, but that's because your boss doesn't understand what the game is, right? I mean, like I said, I use analogies all the time. Urban Meyer, right? You go to one of his practices. First thing they do, all the quarterbacks are over here, all the linemen are over here, right? What are they doing? in the first part of the practice? They're learning their skills, right? Quarterbacks are passing to receivers. They're practicing their skill, right? Do they stop practice when they're done practicing their skills? No. They got to work together as a team to win. So they all come together at the end of practice or halfway through the practice to start running plays together as a team. So they could be really good at the first half and then be really bad at the second. So you could have the best skilled person in the world and you could still lose the game. Okay? That's one of the things that I don't think we do enough of, is really teach the team concept, coach the team concept. Okay? I think we use, poly-skilling, I hear, T-shaped developers. But what does that really mean? That really means working as a team to win the game. And the game is working software. Can you tell I'm passionate about that one?
I wanted to highlight something you kind of said real quickly about 5 minutes ago that I think is really important, is the idea of when you start looking to improve, you need to decide up front how you're going to measure whether you've succeeded in that improvement. Otherwise, it's just going to be an ego exercise. You know, it's because if we're in serious about improvement, we need to know how we're going to assess whether that improvement really occurs or not. And I think that's something that a lot of times.
How do you do that? How do you prove that Agile's made you better?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I for me personally, I look at, first of all, what's the goal, what's the problem I'm trying to solve, and then let's say I'm trying to solve, I want to improve delivery of bug-free code. I'd look at, say, improving lead times, or I'd look at throughput, or I'd look at flow efficiency, or I'd look at any of those metrics, something like that, and then I'd say, look at it over time. I'd implement a change. You follow the scientific method of you apply a change, you measure, you decide whether that's been successful or not, and then you're not afraid to try things to see what really will improve. Instead of making it an intellectual exercise, you make it something where you experiment.
I could not agree more with the concept of measuring, right? And learning over time changes that you put into the system, how it affects your performance based on those measures, right? I think they call it experimenting, right? Hey, let's take this sprint and experiment, right? Let's take this sprint, use our KPIs, our measures that we all believe in and we love, right? And see if we can improve those measures, right? I ask this all the time. I get asked all the time during transformations, Dustin, how are you going to pay for this, right? What's the business case for it? So I have to go back and say, okay, what were our measures before? Do we have any waterfall measures on velocity or anything like that? All we know is we're really slow, right? It takes forever. But I don't have any measures that I can trend over time because I get told each project is different, right? I can't really compare projects or programs. So we're not very good at measures in waterfall. And we have to be good at measures as we move into Agile because we have to learn to improve based on real data, right? Instead of, well, I know we'd be better if we did Scrum. Do you know for sure? Can we see that it actually happened? Measures are a hard thing too because it turns into a stick, right? If you don't meet your measures, right? I know some organizations that you have to hit a certain velocity. Each developer has so many points they're going to deliver. I know some organizations that do that. That's a problem, right? It's not about continuous improvement. Go ahead.
So we spent a lot of time on the slide.
We did.
The reason for it is for me as a coach, it's probably one of the most important slides that you've shown so far. And so in my background, I also have an organizational change management background. And there's an acronym that we use there called ADCOG. And so I try to apply this with the teams as we get into the retrospectives in terms of using that acronym. And so in case people don't know that the acronym is A is for awareness. So are we aware of what we want to try to improve on? And we get that from the retrospective. Do we have the desire to make that improvement as a team? Do we have the knowledge of how we can make that improvement? Do we have the ability? So do we have the skills? Do we have the tools to do that? And then finally is the R, is the reinforcement of it. So we can measure that kind of in subsequent retrospectives in terms of how we've done on these improvements. So I've tried to combine that OCM, bring it down to kind of a team level, to try to kind of get an improvement and reinforce it over time. And it,
Does it work?
Sometimes.
Does it work? This is hard, isn't it?
It is hard.
It's very hard. And we brought up the word permission. A lot of times that gets in the way, right? Is teams don't feel they have permission. I think as a coach, though, we have an obligation to teach them how to identify waste within the system, opportunities for improvement as a team, not as individual, right? If this person would just be a better person in this system, we'd all be better. No, let's take a look holistically and improve that way instead of pointing fingers, right? We do that a lot. I don't know how many times I've heard a CIO make a comment, we would just be better as an IT organization if we had better requirements. Yeah, that's not it. That's not it. I hear that a lot. This seems to have resonated. Let's see if the next one does. You're a new coach. You get parachuted into a team. You're coming in, guns blazing. You're really happy. You think everybody wants to change. Nope. It's quite the opposite. Usually the people that want to change are the people that interviewed you to be a part of the transformation program, like me, right? Who wants to change, but the people who are actually doing the work, they don't want to change. Wait, I used to be able to go home from 2 to 4 and code. Now you want me to pair with somebody during the day? Are you kidding me? I don't want to do that. I don't like to pair. I don't like that person. I don't like that person over there. And you want me to sit with them every day on the same machine and code with them together. By the way, these are serious conversations I've had with developers over the years. Okay? I don't like that person. I don't want to pair with them. If I pair with them, they'll now know what I know, and now they'll be more important than I am. Right? I've actually had that conversation too. How will you rate me, Dustin, if that person knows as much as I do? Hard conversations. As a coach, we got to learn to coach those people who don't want to change. Go ahead.
Don't get off of that one so quick. How do you have that conversation? Because there are internal measures.
Yep.
People against people, right?
Yep. So you do performance evaluations individually, right? Do you do team evaluations?
No.
Do you have team objectives?
We're
Just starting. Think about that. So what I've done over my years is created team objectives. Hey, I want to see you improve your metrics. As a team, everybody gets credit for that. You are a member of the team, you get credit. Right? Performance evaluation should be based on the team evaluating the team, not you evaluating a member of the team, right? So you should be allowing team members to evaluate other team members. Go ahead.
Everybody on the team reports to a different manager.
That shouldn't get in the way. Give me an example of why it would.
Well, I was just curious. You have 2A people on the team reporting to 2A managers. And all the different managers are responsible for the performance reviews unless they're working together.
So you as a coach have to make sure you really talk to the leadership about the idea of the team and performance evaluations based on the team, right? I'm not saying you can convince them to change. Okay, I'm giving you ideas of what I've done. But that's a hard one too, right? Changing the way individuals are evaluated for performance, that's hard. That's hard to do, right?
So if you got a corporate culture where you give individual bonuses based upon you being better than me, what's my incentive to make you better?
So I know there's a buddy of mine that's in this room today that actually did something years ago that I tell people all the time when I stand up and talk about performance evaluations. He actually asked his team to vote on who would get the highest bonus within the team. Did it work? It worked. Actually have the team vote on it. Wow, are you kidding me? What a great concept. Did HR like that, John? Not at all. Became a big problem for you, right? Had a lot of conversations with HR about it. Is it the right thing to do? Well, if you're trying to build a team culture, that's part of it right there. That was a technique that he used, right? Pretty powerful technique. Now, are you going to get resistance? Absolutely. But you got to coach through that. You got to tell them why, right? Go ahead.
So are all improvements based on metrics? So I like the fact that you talked about culture and team dynamics, and there are a lot of improvements in those areas. For instance, you mentioned that your developers don't like each other. How do we evaluate changes like that, where you see more trust, more likability, more collaboration? How do we measure stuff like that that's not in black and white and not belong to charts?
So to me, I've always relied on the team to give me that feedback, right? Meaning, if a person refuses to pair, or even when they pair, they don't pair. I'll give you an example. I've gone into teams and said, oh, we pair program, right? And I've gone in and one developer's here typing and the other one's right over here, working on the phone. Is that pairing? No. And I'm very serious. This was an actual team that claimed they were really good at pairing, okay? Now, another team, I walked in. I thought you told me you were pairing. Well, yeah, these two are pairing. Oh, you mean this person over here typing, and then this person's over here typing. They're pairing, right? I asked, well, how do you communicate? Oh, they got a chat session going on. They were literally 1, 2, 3 paces away from each other, and they had a chat session going on. Okay? A good friend of mine, Rich Sheridan, Menlo Innovations. John knows him really well. He did something that I've never heard anybody do. He only bought one PC or laptop for every 2 people he hired. Wow. Are you kidding me? I was stunned when he told me that. And that was back in 2002, I think, was when we were talking about it. That's how passionate he was about pairing, right? And you can't do that today. You have to coach these people. Some of the best advocates for agile transformation are the people that started like this that turned into your advocates. They now see the light. I got a story about this one. Walked into a very large program. We're creating Scrum teams. I had to identify a product owner, right? This guy steps up. I'm the product owner. Why? Because he wanted to be the boss, right? You know, someone who's the boss of the IT now, the product owner. So the coach is like, okay, great, I'm going to work with him. First thing you ask him to do is what? I don't know, prioritize backlog. Literally a week later, coach comes to me and says, hey, you know, we got to change the product owner. I'm like, why? He won't prioritize the backlog. I'm like, what do you mean he won't prioritize it? He's got 42 number ones. That's true. There are 42 number ones. Guess how many number twos there were? And these are epics. 2. 2 number twos. There were no number 3s. There were no number 4s. It was everything's a 1 except for these 2. Right? And the coach is like, I can't do this. I can't convince him. You got to replace this person. You got to replace them. They refused to listen. I'm like, okay, let me talk to them. So I call them in. I'm like, okay, can we talk about prioritizing the backlog? What's the matter? What's wrong? And immediately he attacks me. Dustin, damn it. The business just wants IT to do what they want. And this is what we want. We want everything. We want you to do it. And damn it, we want you to give us a date. I'm like, whoa, okay, obviously this is a source of contention. So let's talk through this. I'm like, okay, I get you. He said, let me ask this question. Do you think we can do all 42 of these at once in a sprint? You understand our sprint cadence. You understand what we're trying to do. Do you think we can do everything at once? Well, no. I'm like, okay, that's good. So I'm okay if you don't want to prioritize them. So I'm okay. But you recognize that we're not going to do every one of the ones at once. So what's going to happen is I'm going to allow the developer to pick which one he wants to do first. He's like, what? I'm like, well, yeah. We'll just let them pick, right? So you'll probably get the easiest stuff first. The stuff you don't want. But it's maybe even the cool stuff the developer thinks is cool, but it adds zero value to what you're doing. Is that what you want? Because you refuse to prioritize, then what you're really doing is giving permission to the developer to prioritize. Wow. He's like, wait a second. First of all, the business IT relationship is lovely. Business hates IT, right? It costs too much, take too long. And then when you tell them you've just given permission to a developer who you've hated forever, right, to prioritize your requests. Guess what happened? Within 2 days, it was all prioritized. Guess what also happened? Within a year, this product owner actually moved into the team room by himself. Picked up his PC, walked it across the parking lot from one building to another. He didn't call facilities to sit in the team room with the team. At the end of the day, he was actually doing the sprint reviews with the users. He became part of the team. What happened after that? He started coaching other product owners within the organization of how to do it. I was including him in how to be a really good product owner. He was arguing with the business on why you don't want to mandate a date to a team. You don't want to do that because you can get stuff sooner than you think. He was teaching people how to do minimum viable product. And he was one of our worst cases that I've ever had with being stubborn, and he was from the business. That's not even IT. Questions? I saw something here. It was someone at Chase. It was someone at Chase. You get that a lot.
Well, I think it's one of the other things that people don't realize that it is. They don't want to change because they are very comfortable knowing what they don't know. And that's why they don't change.
Okay. So that actually leads into number 7. What's the number one reason why agile transformations fail? I heard the word the other day, just a couple times in this conversation, right? It's a nasty word. It's called culture, right? You will fail as a coach. You are going to fail. Every one of you will fail, right? But remember, that's a good thing. We believe in that. Fail fast, right? Fail fast. I absolutely believe that everybody thinks we all need to get to some place and we're all agile and it's like, we're here, right? I absolutely believe that. That's where everybody thinks we need to be. We're here, we need to run all the way over here, and then everything's going to be great, okay? And then during that path, everybody's like, oh, we got this culture crap that's happening, right? Dustin, you can't do agile transformation unless you change the org, right? Absolutely right. If you do not change your organization, you will fail. Why is that? Talked a little bit about it, command and control, right? I have teams that come to me all the time. Dustin, my boss is still asking for status reports around QA and what happened within the sprint from a QA perspective. That's the culture. That's the culture, right? So we've created this Scrum team, but yet we still have resource managers who are demanding things out of individuals within that team. Because they got to satisfy their boss, whatever it is, right? No coach is going to be able to destroy the culture. Not the first time. Second time, maybe. Third time. Nationwide insurance, been transforming since John and I were there 2002, 3? They're still working on it. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. They're still pushing, still trying to get better. Your culture will always seep back into the system. And as coaches, we've got to recognize that, okay? We got to recognize when the culture comes back in. You may not be able to coach that culture out of the system, but you got to be able to notice it as waste, right? And be able to educate. You will not be able to change it. You will not be able to defeat it. Not in that engagement that you probably have, that 6-month, 1-year engagement. Maybe over a 10-year period. Maybe, right? I have a feeling we'll be doing agile transformation for 20 years until we call it something else. Right? Maybe it'll be finally what we need it to be, which is lean. I think it should be lean because lean is about continuous improvement, right? Agile. I mean, Agile isn't, there's so much within it. There's Scrum, there's Kanban. We're adding new things all the time to it. We'll always be adding new things to it. Culture will always be kicking back, right? I remember in the day, we were introducing Scrum to waterfall teams, and people started calling it cowboy coding. It was cowboy coding. I actually have had conversations in the last year that Scrum has too much governance and does not allow the development team to be less or more having the ability to change more. It's more restrictive. I'm like, yay, we won. We're starting to get to improve. We're starting to see where waste is. Is Scrum perfect? No, not at all. Is there ways for it to improve it? Actually, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's important to make sure you recognize that. Culture, even culture, and you know, it's interesting. Who do you think fights the hardest when a team says they want to do Kanban? Any ideas? Who are the people? Who, from a culture perspective, who are the people that are fighting the most to not be Kanban? Scrum Masters. Why? Their career just went away. You need to be a Kanban master, right? Wait, I just got certified, Dustin. I spent all this time getting certified. I became the expert. I became the coach of the team. And now you're changing it again? It's going to be Kanban? What do I do now, Dustin? Right? That's culture. As we're building these new changes, we create new culture. And we're constantly going to have to be battling that. We have arguments all the time. I actually have a question. How many have created an HR role in their company called Scrum Master? That is unbelievable. unbelievable because I've been in fights forever about whether it should actually be an HR title, right? So I get asked all the time, Dustin, our current titles, App Dev and BA and Tester. What's a Scrum Master? I don't know. All of them? I guess. Well, which one pays them more? Right? I got to incent them to do the job. So let's make them an app dev because they pay more, right? And then that makes all the other app devs unhappy, right? This is, without a doubt, the number one reason why I think transformations fail, of which is actually a good thing. We're going to constantly be battling that. All right, so I started off, what is an Agile coach? Not the boss, right? I was just doing some searching. I found this. I really liked it. It's kind of cool. Coaching equals advice plus experience times support plus help, which constantly feeds development. I love that. That's continuous improvement. I love this. People ask me all the time, Dustin, what's it take to be an Agile coach? What's it take? I want to be an Agile coach. I see a lot of money there. I can make a lot of money being an Agile coach, Dustin. What's it take? I'm like, well, do you have any of this? Have you ever been on an Agile team? Have you been on 2? If you don't have experience, how are you going to be able to coach someone on their problems, right? Support and help. I heard a story, and I'll go back to sports again. Tiger Woods, when he was a good golfer, he's not a good golfer now, right? If anybody remembers, Tiger Woods kept switching swing coaches, his golf coach, right? He would switch. And the very last one, I remember they were interviewing him, and they said, Tiger Woods knows his swing so well. What do you do? And I thought, wow, that's a great question. He gets paid a ton of money. What does he do? And he said, I'm the eyes of Tiger for his swing. I'm like, I see things he doesn't see. It's like, wow. That's really interesting because a coach, the first thing they should do is be able to see things the team doesn't see. A good coach will be able to communicate that in a way that helps them improve, right? Support and help. But they're the eyes. They're the eyes of the team. They're the outside looking in. They're not command and control, but they're a good way to say, you know what? You may have thought of this being a good idea, but what I see is it's causing this kind of an issue, right? That was a really interesting way of describing a coach, and I kind of like it. And I really like this. Go ahead.
You talked about hiring a lot of coaches, and you're going through an agile transformation. How do you feel about bringing in external coaching help versus developing coaching from the internal staff?
That's all I've been able to do in my career is hire external coaches. Because typically if you're doing a transformation at a large organization, you don't have experience, right? You don't have that experience. So it's very important that you go by the experience, okay? So I know all the vendors that have coaches, okay? And that's what I do. I go talk to the vendors, get experienced coaches. I know a lot of the coaches, right, to hire them. Just in the last year, I've interviewed over 100 coaches, right? And the first thing that I look at is what kind of experience you got. Oh, you've only done safe experience. Okay, that could be a problem, right? Well, I've only done Scrum. That could be a problem. May not, right? But I always look for that. And when people come to me and want to get into the coaching business, the first thing I say to them is, what experience have you got? How many teams have you been on? Not even as a Scrum Master. Were you on a team? Were you a team member of a team, right? Have you done Kanban? Have you been a part of a transformation at scale, right? Have you been a part of an organizational transformation, right? It's hard to find that. It's hard to find that. Go ahead.
What you said before, you asked if it was an HR role for the coach. Just so we're clear, are you advocating that? Do you think that's a good idea?
I don't know. I don't know. I think if the problem I have with HR is if you advocate for a role, it stays that role forever. You know what I mean? And it's like moving a mountain to get a new role. And so I've kind of changed my mind. If you would have talked to me about 5 years ago, I was an advocate, has to be a role, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, yeah, but what if I'm Kanban? What do I do now? And so I'm starting to change my mind about it. I don't think there is a right answer. I think the only right answer is HR needs to be flexible. They need to also improve along with the organization. So we have to coach HR. Right.
Scrum Master needs to evolve.
Absolutely.
It can't be just Scrum Master.
Absolutely.
No one is doing Scrum, really.
I mean, some of the radical teams, I'm sure John has seen, where they don't use roles at all. You're just a team member, right?
In a mature team, I don't think the Scrum there is a role as a Scrum Master, right? That's self.
You've seen a mature team?
Okay, what?
I've seen teams experiment. I don't recommend you experiment rotating the Scrum Master role on a new team. I never recommend that. I always recommend that you bring in experience with a team. If you recognize a Scrum Master is also a coach of the team, right? You'll understand that, right? That's why coaches should coach Scrum Masters, almost like a train the trainers type situation. Because when you leave, who's the coach of the team? Should be the Scrum Master. But over time, should that role go away? And because, back to, this word could actually equal the boss, right? So now is the Scrum Master boss. So I ask this, I see this all the time where they want to report the entire team, HR report to the Scrum Master. Is that a good thing? No. Not at all. Not at all. That's why a Scrum Master can't be a boss, right? All right, this was my last slide. What do we got? 15 minutes? Is that what it is? First of all, obviously, questions for the next 15 minutes, but thank you for coming. Hopefully this was helpful. I will entertain all kinds of questions if you want to get up and leave. I'm not going to be offended. But we'll get into the question segment of the day. Go ahead.
So you started off talking about purity.
Agile purist? Yep.
So I would consider myself somewhat of a purist.
Good.
But I'm kind of curious what you would define that as. So when I think of it, I think of the teams coming to me saying, we don't need to do stand-up every day. We don't need to do a retrospective. Can we make the stand-up longer than 15 minutes? Because we need to get through more information.
So would you, as a purist, say no?
I would.
Why?
Because there's a reason that we time box that stand-up to 15 minutes, because we don't want it to be a status meeting. I don't want it to be problem solving yet. I want the team to find the opportunity to do that and then take that away. So I do enforce, and that's my role.
So you enforce it?
My role is to enforce the rules of Scrum, because that's the framework that...
The rules. So you enforce the rules.
The process.
I'm just calling out some words. That sounds like a boss, by the way. You enforce the rules.
But that's the way Scrum is defined. It's Scrum Master, right?
So is there such words as such concept of self-empowerment? Team self-empowerment? Is that part of Agile? How does that interact with rules? If a team comes to you as a coach and says, hey, we would like to try it, they're asking for permission to try something new.
I would say if it was a team that was pretty mature and had been together for a while, possibly, but I don't, again, I think you talked a couple times about why do teams fail. I see teams fail often because there's way too much compromise, that it just, whatever the team wants, we'll give them that, right? And that's why you end up with terms like Agile fall. And that's why I hear people always ask the question about, how do I
you know, how do I produce my Gantt charts and how do I do my status meetings and my planning sessions? And it's like, well, that's not what Agile is supposed to be. It's supposed to be different than that.
Yeah. So what's interesting is, and this is back to some of the comments around Kanban has less rules than Scrum, right? And how what's interesting is things have changed over time where there was tons of rules in waterfall. You were a cowboy coder in Scrum, right? You were cowboys. You could change every 2 weeks. In waterfall, you couldn't change ever. You could change every 2 weeks. And then they're like, oh, I see Kanban. I can change every day, right? I can change what I'm doing every day. And so you started to see that pushback on the rules, right? And I think what's interesting is you as a coach know the intent of the rule, where most new teams, and I agree with you, most new teams don't know the intent of the rule. Why do we do this? Okay? So the typical pushback of a new team, against the rules is because they really don't understand why, right? They're not working together. There's many other things that could be why. So for you as a coach to say no is actually okay in my opinion, but you have to be good at explaining to them the intent. What I also say is experiment. Let's say, okay, try it your way, see how that works, okay? But the real reason we do this is because of this, right? Does that make sense?
Sure, and you know, Scrum is the framework by which I, you know, base most everything on. But I do bring in some of the other practices, you know, as complementary practices, some of the XP practice. I mean, that's story pointing, that sort of thing. You know, I use the Kanban board. We don't enforce, you know, whip limits or anything like that. Not formally, but informally, I will ask the question. You know, are we bottlenecking? Are we you know, collecting things in work in progress and therefore not delivering value, that sort of thing.
And remember, new teams see rules as the problem, right? And even Scrum has rules, like you said, and you've got to be really good about even those rules about getting them to understand intent, right, as a coach. And then hopefully, you know, just like the rule of prioritization, right? It's a new rule. We got to prioritize your backlog. Okay, I don't want to do the new rule. Well, let's talk about that. Let's explain why it's valuable for you to do the rule. Go ahead.
I have a question about roles. One of the problems I often see with roles is that it leads to tribalism. And I was wondering if you could comment on, from your experience, how you coach around people who overly fixate on roles, and that leads to that tribalistic behavior.
I got great examples. Almost every new team that I've created will take all the QAs, the devs, and the BAs, we'll funnel them into a team space, right? Probably an old conference room nobody wants, and say, okay, you're now a Scrum team. And then you'll come back 2 sprints later, all the QAs are huddled in this corner, all the devs are sitting next to each other, and then all the BAs are sitting next to each other, and the Scrum Master is sitting way off to the side. How do you handle that? How do you coach around it? Hey, let's change spots. Okay, we've been doing this for hey, let's experiment. QA, why don't you split up, sit with the devs, right? Why don't you try that, right? I've actually forced people to QAs and devs to pair, right? At the same time. When they're coding, they're developing their tests at the same time and they're pairing, right? Instead of doing pairing of devs, I just done pairing of QA and developer. Hey, learn their name. Before you created a defect and went into the system, you didn't know who was on the backside, right? Well, now they're sitting right next to you. Learn their name. Maybe you create walks together. Hey, right after stand up, we're all going to go for a walk. Hey, let's do, the 2 pizza thing, right? It's great to have teams eat together. Those are just techniques I've done. I'm not saying they all work every time, but you know, it's about breaking down those silos of QA, BA, and getting them to work as a team. First thing is getting them to know each other as an individual, right? Start there. See how it morphs. Say it again? I don't know about that. It works for everybody who likes beer, right? And likes to just be away from their family at night. I don't like that. I don't like that in terms of team building. You know, the reason it's after hours is because most management feel during hours you need to work. You cannot take time to do anything but work. Okay, let them have permission. Give them permission to do something different, right? Go ahead.
Two things actually. One is we fixed that by having beer at work.
At work? Even better. I think John fixed that too, right? Having beer at work.
But the real question was actually a follow-up to something you said about sometimes you force QA and developers to work together. And I was curious if you've thought about when is it appropriate to force that versus when do you teach a concept so that they discover they want to do that?
Wow. I don't know. I think sometimes in order to break the barrier, you got to force it. Sometimes. You know, just the concept of the team comes back and wants the daily stand-up to be an hour. Okay? Maybe you enforce it. Just like my switching of the team the team seats, I forced that, right? I don't know that there's a right answer with that. I think it's based on the team, right? I hate to say that. I don't know that I have an answer. Does anybody else have an answer?
I think what I've seen working more in the past is, as a coach or as a Scrum Master, if you influence for them to start talking and collaborating, then at some point down the road, the pairing will happen as a nature to them because now they are so much interested in interacting with each other and getting each other's opinion. You don't have to force them to pair. They will just naturally say, hey, let's just figure it out how this works together. Like, so the boundary between I'm a dev versus a QA will start blurring and say, hey, we need to solve this problem. Let's do it.
I think teams mature at a different rate, right? So I've had some very stubborn teams that didn't want to work together at all. Co-location's a big issue. If you don't start out co-located, you know, they don't have to, right? They can get their own work done. You got to build some things into the system that forces teams to work together. Were all my teams distributed? Gosh, almost every place I've been to doing transformation, they had an issue with distributed teams. You know, developers in India, testers in India. The first thing you do as a coach is you want to change that, right? Well, that's hard. That's hard, and many of the teams don't do that. I heard a person who I respect well, because I've always been push hard to co-locate as much as possible. So we'd end up with, okay, you got all the developers in one building, got all the testers in another building, and then you got, you know, the QA or the BAs over here. And this person made a comment to me. It's like, that's actually worse than fully distributed. And I had to take a step back because I was like, well, no, I'm incrementally improving. You know, I'm getting better because now instead of everybody dispersed, I've now got blobs of you know, and that seemed better to me, right? But what she was saying is, if you have everybody dispersed, you rely totally on co-location to participate in the team. Or not co-location, I'm sorry. You rely totally on technology to participate within the team. If you have blobs of pods of people, they can be within the team, work together, and not communicate to the other pod, right? So that actually makes it worse because you don't force the communication. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, it's either all or nothing. I'm like, that might be a good way to coach, right? Might be a good way to coach. Because what I've seen over time is, oh, I can't co-locate all the teams until this contracting assignment's out, and then I can move them, right? That type of stuff. So it takes time, and I was okay with that for a long time until, you know, someone said, you know what, that may actually be worse. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer with that. I think you've got to coach teams through that. That's part of compromise too. Co-location, you got to figure out how to compromise.
One of the things that Scrum advocates is that potentially the team can vote someone off the island. But because of your favorite group, HR, I've never seen that actually implemented.
I've seen it. So I'll give you a story. I had a situation. One of my first Scrum teams. I, as a manager, was given a developer before they started sprinting, and as usual, when someone gives someone up, there's a reason. They're not very good, right? So they ended up on my team. And turns out when I started looking at all the HR notes on this person, he's been she has been on probation for 2 years. 2 years. Probation for 2 years. There's no gaps. And the first thing I said was to HR, I'm like, what do I do with this? Well, we don't have enough information for you to fire them. I'm like, it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years. Please. No, we need another 6 months. I'm like, okay. So I had to write up all the things, Well, then we created a Scrum team and we put them on a Scrum team. Very first sprint. 4 members from the team are in my office. Dustin, this person's not working. I'm like, what do you mean? We gave him literally a 4-hour task. It's day 2, it's not done. And he won't talk to anybody, won't do anything. I'm like, okay, I'll talk to him. So that was Wednesday. Friday, I schedule a meeting with him. Thursday, they come to me again. We try it again. He's still not done with that task. I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk to him tomorrow. We'll get it fixed. Friday, walks into my office, he quits. I was jumping up and down. 2 years, this person had been hiding in waterfall teams, hiding under the protection of HR. He immediately got exposed in a sprint that he didn't know what he was doing. And his comment to me was, Dustin, it's obvious I'm not a good enough coder to be here. I need to find something else, therefore I'm quitting. I was like, wow. I didn't have to do anything. This is great. Self-selecting out, right? You're transparent. You're pairing now with someone, right? If you're not any good at coding and you're pairing with somebody, that's going to get exposed pretty easily, right? Teams become more conscious because they need to work together to win the game, right? If they know this person's weighing down the team and they're not able to win the game because this person's not pulling their weight, the team self-selects out, right? As much as possible. It's really interesting how the team dynamic kind of changes some of that aspect. I'm not saying everybody's going to quit, but you start to realize when people can't be a good team member, right? Go ahead.
Or they see themselves fitting better
somewhere else, right? I tell people all the time, Agile can be for everything, but not everyone can be Agile, right? There are people that just can't cut it on a team, but they can hide in waterfall. What time is it? I see people leaving. It's 11:17. I'll stick around if you want to talk. This was great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hopefully it was helpful.